All right, Big Meg, today is Tuesday. It is November 21st. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Here with Chief as always. Chief, how are you? Last episode before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so let's make it things that we're thankful for, keep it light, all that kind of stuff, right?
No, we're not going to keep it light at all. As you people saw from the title, very heavy topic.
Yeah, so this is something that I think we've touched on as part of different episodes where, you know, we did a review of, what was the name of that show?
Dope Sick.
Dope Sick,
Yeah.
about the Sackler family and the opioid crisis here. And then, I think we did another episode about the opium wars, which involved China. We've done things about the Mexican drug cartels. And all of that kind of comes together. And now we're going to get into like the business and the international kind of diplomacy and jockeying around the fentanyl trade, because it is a huge business, and it's, several different organizations that are consistently butting heads, and who ends up losing out on that is ultimately the American people, and in all sorts of different ways, but obviously the death toll. And this is not just a fentanyl stat, this is a stat for all opioid use. So Oxycontin, the prescription from Purdue Pharma and others, heroin, and including fentanyl, there's been over 1 million deaths related to opioid overdoses since 1999. It's the number one killer of men ages 18 to 45. So, and it just keeps going up. In 2021, there are over 80,000 overdose deaths in the United States. So it's like an astonishing stat.
Before we do, though, I want to talk about RHOBACK Activewear. You guys know the drill by now. Best hoodies, joggers, crew necks, and fleece pullovers are in their new thing. They're very soft and comfortable. It's a brand new release.
The GOAT.
Yes.
The GOAT.
They're good stuff. They're perfect for a chilly day or a night out. Beyond comfortable. And, the thing I like about RHOBACK is when you see the little dog logo, when you see the two stripes in the back, you just know who's a RHOBACK guy.
Yeah.
You just know.
A lot of RHOBACK guys around this company.
Oh, they're 100%.
Yeah. And I feel like, maybe it's just, I think the logo is so sweet, and I know the brand. I feel like I just see it in the wild all the time.
Yeah.
Like RHOBACK's everywhere.
Yeah, it's definitely picking up. I mean, for sure we see it here, but you see it outside, and it's awesome. Because
golf courses, bars. I went to Chicago Cut recently, just people just sitting down for a nice steakhouse dinner wearing RHOBACK, because that's like the beauty of it. You can wear it literally anywhere.
Yep, it's a great mix of like being comfortable and being casual, but also like not looking like a bum. That's RHOBACK.
Yep.
So use code DOG on RHOBACK.com for 20% off all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all hoodies, joggers, and polos with code DOG. It's holiday
20%
season.
off is,
yes.
I feel like I make a point about that, because it's just like you hear a lot of these ads and you're like, oh, it's whatever. 20%. All you have to do is type in DOG, 20% off.
That's it. And it's holiday season, so don't be late this year, and be sure to check them out at RHOBACK.com. Buy some gifts for your family, your friends, whoever. And that promo code expires tomorrow, so make sure you hop on it right now.
And when you kind of think about, and you can't, it's not apples to apples, and you can't really compare it, but like, 3,000 Americans died in 9/11, and we went to war for 20 years. 80,000 die. 80,000 have died just in 2021, and it's like, like the urgency and the level of commitment to fix a problem and to get to the bottom, it just isn't the same as we've seen from other crises. And I think there's a few reasons for that. I think psychologically, the American citizen is like, I think people are just like, that person has made a bad choice, kind of thing. Is part of it for sure, but then it's like this. But this is a real problem that I think that should be. You can't be losing 80,000 people a year for drugs or for anything else. So it is something that we should really harp on and focus on it and get to the bottom of it and find a solution, because it's tragic.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean,
yeah,
that is weird how it's rationalized in different aspects like that.
Yeah.
But based on like your war example, to
right,
just I don't know, when it comes to people making a bad choice versus being taken out by a different country's terrorist group or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just,
right, and
it's seen as a
and I understand that too, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't have I don't know. I feel like in historically we've had other organizing principles besides war, where the whole country can get behind it. Like, you know, there's the Kennedy, like, we're going to go to the moon by the end of the decade, and we put the money, the people, the resources into making that happen, and they did. And then, you know, we've had other things where it's like we're going to rally behind a thing and get it done. And I feel like this is one of those things where it's like it shouldn't really be political. It's just like, hey, like, we have to use any means necessary to stop this, because we're losing 80,000 people or more a year.
Yeah,
it's terrible. And those stats that I just pulled, they're from the CDC. So it's not like some, you know, we do a lot of conspiracy theories on the show. This is just cold hard data from, you know, trusted government agencies like the CDC. And in 2019, I found this surprising, that fentanyl was still in the top 300 for most prescribed drugs in the United States, over 1 million prescriptions. And so you can, at that point, you could still get it legally. And that was a different era where, you know, there's been Netflix documentaries about like these pill mills, where you have these doctors set up in like a strip mall mailing address, and then they would just write out, oh, you need Oxycontin, you need whatever, you need fentanyl, opioid. I'll just write you the script. And it was like they're basically drug dealers running pill mills, and they have cracked down on those. But it's been there's a lot of issues that go into this. And really one of the biggest ones is how fentanyl is classified by the U.S. government. So you know about like the schedules, right, for drugs?
Yeah.
So there's 5 different schedules. So like I think the 5th tier, Schedule 5, is like something you would get over the counter, like an Advil, Motrin, like whatever, stuff like that. And then you go all the way up to Schedule 1, where it has things like heroin, but also marijuana. Like marijuana is federally, even though it's been legalized by many states, it's still a Schedule 1 drug. And the distinction is that it has no real medical purpose. It's just basically for people to get high and to like cause bodily harm. Where Schedule 2 is, it has a function. And fentanyl has a medical function. So
Schedule 2 narcotic.
Schedule 2 narcotic, yeah. So they're saying it does have a medical function, and it does. So it was originally invented in 1959 by a Belgian chemist, and he was just looking for an alternative to morphine. And he came up, just devised this chemical compound, which is fentanyl, and it is anywhere from 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, 50 times more potent than heroin. You can overdose as little as 2 milligrams, but if used correctly, like in a hospital, they're coming up with a way to do. They needed like an acute pain medication, numbing thing, for to do like open heart surgeries and things like that. So when administered by a doctor in a hospital in a surgical setting, it can be very effective because it enters your bloodstream and works more quickly and leaves your body more quickly. But the problem with that is that makes it more dangerous as an illicit drug. So when not, you know, overseen by doctors, it becomes more addictive because it leaves your body so fast. So if you do heroin, supposedly, you do it like once a day and then you're set. You do fentanyl, you need to do it every 2, 3, 4 hours because you keep kind of like having that crash afterwards. So you just kind of keep re-upping, which makes it more addictive and more dangerous.
But why the hell is this any way, shape, or form available outside of a medical emergency room setting, surgical setting?
That is kind of why we're here, okay? Because it is like a manufactured crisis, and it was legalized to use on the Schedule 2 in 1988 in the United States. The FDA approved the manufacturing, sale, prescriptions of it. And like anything else, this was born out of, it was Purdue Pharma came up with Oxycontin, and as they showed in that show Dope Sick, when people could no longer get those prescriptions, some doctors would cut them off or whatever, they still had this dependency, which is why they then would turn to heroin, morphine, other things. And you had this crisis where people were dying because they were doing it themselves because they were addicted. And what happened was fentanyl also slid in to the market after OxyContin and some of these like legalized prescription drugs. There started to be a clampdown on those. That's when heroin and fentanyl became way more pervasive because people could get it. And there's like a confluence of issues. Like it's like a perfect storm. So you had like American industry, pharmaceutical industry created the demand by lying about how addictive these opioids were in the legal form of OxyContin and other things. Then you take that away. Well, the demand has already been created, so it has to be backfilled by something. That's where the heroin and fentanyl come in. You also had a situation where you had the Mexican drug cartels forever had specialized in marijuana and cocaine. Like those were the two products that they would ship over the border forever, but obviously more and more so 80s and beyond.
So we'll get into it. Before we do that, I want to talk about MUGSY jeans. MUGSY makes the most comfortable jeans, chinos, shorts, and joggers ever. They're made from buttery soft, patented stretch materials that look stylish but are insanely comfortable. Never too baggy, never too tight. We currently have the Barstool Invitational tonight. Jeff, I remember, what was it for the hockey game? You were wearing a nice MUGSY.
Yeah, MUGSY jacket,
yes.
MUGSY pants. I'll be wearing MUGSY jeans tonight.
It's the best.
Yeah, I wear them all to the live shows now. They have like those chinos. It's not even just jeans. They have so many things. They're great. They're like sport coats too. Are awesome. I wore them for the dozen tournament in the finals. They're great. MUGSY's the best.
How big do I have to get to start getting free shit?
What do you mean? What do you need?
Like how many followers do I need to start getting free shit?
Like
because I just wait for Nick to come with like leftovers and I just pick out.
Do you want a pair of MUGSY jeans?
Yeah.
All right,
we get you MUGSY.
All
right, and go use code Chicago for 10%
and
off.
also
Maybe go into your pocket.
Yeah.
I don't like going in my pocket.
Use
Unless
my
it's for
promo
drugs, betting, or women. I don't go in my pockets.
Ad.
And thankfully, it's a rated R ad. MUGSY doesn't give a shit. So we're good.
Shout out MUGSY.
So head to MUGSY.com. Like Danny said, get 10% off now using code Chicago. That's 10% off some of the most premium jeans, chinos, swimwear, and shorts on the internet. MUGSY also offers free shipping and returns. So there's absolutely no risk giving them a try. They got stores in Chicago, Boston, D.C., Austin. So head downtown, check out their storefront. Easy vibes every time. Enjoy a beer while you shop.
Well, as more and more states in the 2010s, Colorado, California, Illinois, Vermont all started either decriminalizing or legalizing weed, that cut into the cartel's profits a ton because it's like, well, our consumer base is just going legal, and so how do we combat that? We're not just gonna make less money. So what they did was they diversified a little bit. So they're in all sorts of businesses. They own all the resorts. They own fucking everything. And they own avocado plantations. But they also started being like, okay, we're going to get more heavily into cocaine, and we're going to get more heavily into fentanyl and heroin and all these other like deadlier drugs. And they were able to get those very easily from China. So China, the estimation is that 90% of all fentanyl and fentanyl analogs, okay, which is basically like a knockoff version of fentanyl. So fentanyl, it'd be like, trying to think of an example of, like it's almost like, hey, like I'm not buying Advil, I'm buying, the whatever the Jewel Osco Walgreens, the generic version, or a fucking I'm not getting Cheerios, I'm getting the Aldi
O's
brand, just O's, right? So it's like that, but for fentanyl. Mm-hmm. And so they say 90% of all fentanyl and fentanyl related products are manufactured in China. 90%. Mm-hmm. So if we have this issue where it's killing 80,000 plus Americans a year, and it's all coming from China, shipping directly to the cartels who then smuggle it in, that's like the crux of this problem. And China is able to do it because, they, like everything else, and then when they opened up for business with the Western world in the 1970s, Nixon, repaired the relations or whatever, they started manufacturing chemicals and pharmaceuticals, and they started manufacturing everything, dishwashers, whatever, any like product, circuit boards, everything that was used to be made in the United States could now be made cheaper and with less regulation in China than it was here. So they set up these like mass, these companies that would build up all these manufacturing facilities to make they call it the fentanyl precursors, all these chemical compounds, which they could either turn into fentanyl themselves or just ship the raw material product that they synthesized over to Mexico. Mexico has their own labs. They make it. So they're basically like, yeah, we don't have anything to do with it. We're just making these chemicals. Well, it's like you're making these chemicals and knowingly selling them to drug cartels to manufacture and assemble them basically and turn it into fentanyl and ship it out to the United States. And that is kind of where like it gets a little bit sticky, and why people are like who's actually at fault here? Like, do you hold China responsible directly? Do you hold there's not much doing to stop the cartels about this, but it's like who ultimately is at fault and in charge, and how do you solve this problem? And China was like, that's fucking your problem. You're 86% of the market for fentanyl worldwide is for United States consumers. So it's like, hey, like you have a domestic drug problem, don't look at us. It's basically China's stance. And if you look at what they did historically, we talked about the Opium Wars before. So the Opium Wars, quickly as a recap, the British Empire, they were trading with China all the time. They wanted China's tea, they wanted China's silk, and they were paying silver to get all this stuff and ship it back to the UK and elsewhere. And they were eventually, China was getting very, very wealthy. And all, back then you traded in hard currency, gold and silver. So China was getting like a shit ton of gold and silver. And the English were like, this doesn't really sit right with us. So they started producing opium in India, which was a British colony, and selling it to the Chinese. And the Chinese got so addicted on opium that 25% of their male population was spending all their time in opium dens. And China was like, hey, like stop selling this opium here. It's like killing our population. And the English were like, no. So they ended up going to war, and that's how England got Hong Kong, and that's how they kind of, China calls the 1800s their century of shame. And it's because they had all these issues. And then Mao, when they go communist, they had they put over like 800 different drug smugglers, opium dealers in China to death. They had compulsory rehab. So it's like, hey, either you go to rehab or you go to jail or we kill you. Like those are like the only things. Mao was killing people all over the place, but they had like a very strict drug policy and still do. They still, if you're a drug smuggler in China today, you will get the death penalty. So like they don't fuck around with that. So they look at us, be like, hey, like you guys have this kind of laissez-faire attitude towards drugs. So get your own house in order. It's not our problem. Like you guys are the ones creating the market and doing the drugs. And we're like, okay, like, yeah, but the cat's already out of the bag. Like we have to like stop the flow and come up with another problem or come up with a solution. So Trump went to China, and he started putting like different pressures on them, and China was actually playing ball, and they created this thing called the Stop Act in 2017. And China did outlaw or ban all of these analogs, okay? But we have a law when it comes to manufacturing those. It's like those drugs are banned even if they don't exist yet, okay? Where it's like you can't make any like synthetic anything. It's banned, okay? Where China was, you'd be like, you said you made the Cheerio reference. You have the O's, Like, hey, we're making O's. And then China be like, okay, wait, O's are banned. And they're like, all right, well, now we're making puffs. Same fucking ingredients, but it's a little bit different. And then they have to go through a whole process. So they're always, the chemists in China are always kind of one step ahead of the ban. So that was going on for 2 years, after this Stop Act and after this cooperation. And, we had like the trade war with China, and then COVID happens. And, Trump is out there being like, hey, this is the China virus. China started this, all this kind of stuff. And then China basically said, all right, we're not going to enforce any of our laws on the books when it comes to narcotics. And so then it would just came like it was like it's illegal, but like you're not going to really get in trouble. And that's kind of the crux of this issue too, is that when there's this journalist, his name's Ben Westhoff, and he wrote a book called Fentanyl Inc. And he posed as a drug dealer, like a mass drug dealer. And he said that before 2019, you could just go on Google, like not dark web stuff, just Google, and say, companies that sell fentanyl in China, and you could order fentanyl on the internet and have it shipped to your front door, like that, like no problems.
That's crazy.
That
is nuts.
2019 that was happening. So he did this whole elaborate thing where he posed as a drug lord, as the purpose to learn more about the fentanyl industry. Flies over to China. They take him out to some, like, the way he described it was just like an industrial park, like office park. And it's not like you would think about drug cartels or drug manufacturers in Colombia or Mexico, where they have these guys with like Uzis and like heavily armed and all that shit. You just walk in with like a key fob.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, walk in with the key fob. Oh, here's our chemistry lab where we're making all these precursors and we're making fentanyl, and we just ship them out. And he's like, that's fucking weird. And it's like, how is this so like casual, where you're making like these deadly drugs to ship off across the world and kill people? And so then he started getting more in the weeds, because it's like it is the thing in China. You can't really do business in China without permission or government knowledge. There is they're becoming more capitalist and more free, but you can't do anything without the approval of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. So he basically he figured out that there's all these companies making these synthetics, these analogs of fentanyl products and fentanyl precursors. And they're all kind of just shell corporations for one company, and it was called Wanjiang. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And of all places, Wuhan. Okay. And they're like the shell company. So he found his way up to get to like the mass shell company, this Wanjiang company. And he walked in, and they had an office with a sales force of 700 plus people. And all they're doing is calling, on drug cartels, hey, we got, this fentanyl ingredient, we got that fentanyl ingredient. And they're just selling it as if they're selling, it's Dwight Schrute selling paper in the office. Like it's just like corporate America type of situation, but they're selling these dangerous chemicals and drugs with the knowledge that it will be manufactured and distributed as fentanyl into the United States. And China definitely knows about that, and they just stopped like caring, because like the trade wars and the rhetoric between, surrounding the whole thing with COVID really ramped up. And so they just ignored it. And it's like huge, it's become a big business. And China is just like, kind of like, hey, we don't, like, on the books, we care, but they don't have like an extradition policy where like, hey, like this person, like if we know, like, hey, this person is doing this illegal thing, China won't, help us pursue criminal charges against like a known drug manufacturer and dealer. And so it's like, how do you stop this problem?
It's a common thing too, going back to what you said, where they just, all right, O's are now illegal, let's turn them into double O's. That's what I know you didn't get to it yet, but that telemarketer's doc on HBO. That's what this group was called, Civic Development Group.
Yeah.
And they got hit with like an $18 billion fine. They had to stop operations. They did. They paid like whatever. Like, all right, we will dissolve the company. We'll turn in the money and we'll cease operations. And then they just like made a new name and they did it all over again.
Yeah. And
it's crazy how common that is.
Well, and that's kind of, it reminded me of like, is it anabolic steroids? Where it's like, oh, like what's the Olympic anti-doping or whatever that agency is. And it's like, we're testing for, like this particular steroid that we know has become prevalent, or Major League Baseball or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Hey, we're gonna, I think it is WADA. Thank you, Harry.
World Anti-Doping Agency.
Yes, I think yes. And so they would come out with a way to test for this particular steroid chemical compound, and then by the next Olympic cycle, everybody was on something else that they didn't know how to test for yet. So they're always one step ahead. And those companies, now China could pass a law tomorrow, be like, same as our law. If you're trying to make an analog version of fentanyl, we will prosecute you.
Yeah, but they're not doing that.
They're not doing that.
For a specific reason.
Right.
And it's kind of like pre-workout. Remember when you took pre-workout like back in the day, like high school and shit? They would always just kind of release a formula, and then I think it would get checked, and they'd always have to change it.
Yeah.
And then like something new would pop up, and that was the next big thing, whether it be, Explode or Jack 3D or whatever it was. It was always kind of like...
Yeah, just staying one step ahead.
Just pass the buck to this next product.
Because that's not... I mean, that's probably on a different schedule as a drug, as a compound. It's probably a Schedule 5, right? And it's like, wait, this should actually be a Schedule whatever because it's dangerous. And they're like, okay, well, then they just change it. And it's... that's how it goes.
Yeah, there's just a lot of money to be made in the loophole game like that.
Ton.
If you don't have a conscience.
Ton.
I'm not saying like, largely that example of like pre-workout, pretty harmless, you would think.
You would think.
But like when it comes to
this, it's a highly addictive, deadly drug, and it's become so profitable and addictive that that's where like a lot of these overdose deaths come from. Someone thinks they're doing cocaine. Well, it's cocaine with fentanyl, and because like I said, 2 milligrams is enough to kill you, and it's just a white powder, and it's odorless. So like if you're not like the type to like test your drugs beforehand, and it's laced with fentanyl, you could, what?
But here's the question that everyone asks, and I've never found someone that could really answer: is what benefit does it do these drug dealers to kill their clientele? I don't understand that at all.
There's more and more drug users coming all the time.
Yeah, but still, like, isn't it better to keep a customer than if you're looking at it through that lens? I understand we're talking about humans and lives, but if you're looking at it through that lens, it doesn't make fundamental sense to me.
No, I would agree, but the cigarette companies went through the same thing, and it's like, hey, like all your customers are getting lung disease.
Yeah, but they're not instantaneous deaths like this. It's a little different in my eyes.
Yeah, but
it's not really needed to get the outcome that people are looking for.
I think it could be if it was cocaine, because like I said, it has that 2-hour cycle, right? So it's like, hey, like I need another little, even though it's an upper, you have an upper mixed with a downer, but it's like you have the addictive properties that come with the opioid. And the numbing, all that comes with the opioid, and then you have the upper bump, and it's like, so hey, like you kind of cycle in and out. You use more, you just use more, and I think that's and that's like the other thing, like people, cartels and drug dealers been cutting cocaine with other substances basically since cocaine was existed. And there's like that scene in what's the Johnny Depp one, the movie Blow, thank you, where he brings cocaine to the market in California in the 70s for like the first time, and they have that kind of like hippie dude testing it, and he's like testing the different like how like they're doing something, I don't even know what they're doing, but they're testing like the temperatures, like the kind of like the boiling point, I believe it was. Yeah. And he's like, holy shit, like where did you get this? And he's like, Colombia. Like I got it from fucking Pablo Escobar. It's like as pure as it gets, because nobody had seen it, because it was always being cut with something to make your profits larger. So I think fentanyl is the same sort of logic, where it's like, hey, we'll just cut this stuff and mix in some fentanyl to get people more addicted, and we're using less cocaine, and the shit that the fentanyl we're getting, especially if you're getting it from China, the Mexican drug cartels, is so fucking cheap that it makes sense. So you'll end up selling. You might kill some of your customer base, but same thing as a cigarette. So you'll probably use more.
Yeah,
it would be the answer to that.
Okay.
And then there's some 14-year-old who tries it for the first time the next year, and on and on you go.
Yeah, so it's not seen as like a risk for them because there will always be
there are more people.
A consumer.
Yeah.
All right, I guess, but it still seems kind of.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a logical position to take, but I guess they also just probably like whatever, like who fucking cares? Like, these people are animals, like they don't give a shit. And that's like the other thing. Like there's evidence of like high-ranking Mexican cartel leaders traveling to China to look at laboratories, set up like like they would like do the investment round. Okay, like hey, like we'll build the infrastructure and get you the equipment to build these labs in different places in China, and then you ship it, to us directly and exclusively. Like that was happening in 2016. So that to me is like, so like they know, they know what they're who their customers are and what they're doing, and there's just no real effort to stop it because there's so much money in it, trillions. Yeah, there's an estimation that and it's like a ton of different things. It's how the actual money, okay, like the actual money leaving the U.S. economy and going back to China or Mexico as a result of this. We're spending our money on drugs, and then there's also, because of what an opioid addiction does to you, it takes you out of the workforce, and so it's like you have less workers in the workforce. So you're estimating it's like $1.5 trillion a year in lost GDP, which is like 7% of the economy, based on this opioid crisis. So man hours lost, deaths, all this, and then the actual physical money, all attributed to fentanyl.
Now, okay, so the trillions obviously for the cartels, and China's banking on it too. You're saying
huge. Yeah, well, they're making it all.
But how much more of it do you think it is that it's like a backdoor route into harming a country that they don't really have great relations with?
Well, that's a real. That's where like the conspiracy parts of it kind of get in.
Yeah, because it seems to me, the way that, listen, yeah, you want to call it conspiracy or what, but like if that's.
Well, they definitely know. They're not doing anything to stop it.
Yeah, like if that's a motive, and then same with, Russia getting people, all at each other's throats with politics and
us too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, but that's what I'm saying, like like bots and that was founded that people are the culture wars are ramped up to 1 trillion because of countries that we don't necessarily have a great relationship with. Stoking, fanning the flames.
There's a word for this. It's called asymmetrical war, asymmetrical warfare, and that's definitely a thing. And if you look like how do you weaken a country, you go after their fighting age males, okay, historically, and that's not just like that's been studied for millennia, okay. Like you weaken the population of fighting age males. So what's the number one killer in the United States of men 18 to 45? Overdose on drugs. Who does it disproportionately harm versus the rest of the population? Military veterans is who they have. You have twice of you're twice as likely to get addicted to opioids if you're a military veteran than part of the regular population. So if you're seeding all these kind of culture war, drug war, all these different things, and you're taking money out of the economy. You're taking people out of the country, and I'm not saying fighting age males for the purpose of fighting, but that's just like that's like a category that people descriptive, which basically just means 18 to 45. But those are typically the most productive people in your workforce. If you were to have a hot conflict, those would be the people who would be doing the fighting, and it is a major drain on a country when you go after that segment of the population. And that's been a thing, Roman Empire all the way back. If you want to topple a country, you find a way to weaken that part of of a population, and that is like it's what was Sun Tzu, he had the art of war. He's like, the best way to win a war is to do it without firing a shot, and you want to weaken your opposition before you even go to war. And that's you can make an argument that China is like, well, maybe if we had better relations and we had better trade agreements and we had all, you guys kind of worked with us on Taiwan, whatever. I'm making these things up. But if we had better trade relations or better relations with the United States, like they were starting to be cooperative on these things back in 2017 with that Stop Act, like I mentioned, then China would play ball a little bit more on this issue. But if it's like, hey, like you're doing all these tariffs, you're blaming us for COVID, you're who know, they might blame us for all sorts of things, where it's like, what, fuck you guys. We were working with you on this, but we're not doing it anymore. Yeah. So it's really it's a big problem. It's a big problem. And they, the other word, because it's not black market necessarily on China's end. They call it gray market because these are legal businesses. And they would argue that, especially the ones that are only manufacturing the precursors. So it's like, fentanyl is a chemical compound. I don't know exactly what the chemicals are.
Yeah, but why is it allowed to be imported into the USA though? Can't you
stop
that?
It's not. So you can send
and then the cartels are the one. It's illegal to go into Mexico.
So
and then they're just sneaking.
So
it
is still like hospitals still will use fentanyl. So there are, and if they're controlling 80 or 90% of the precursors too, the manufacturing of these chemicals, they can still send the raw materials to, Pfizer, whoever is manufacturing like the legal version that is used in hospitals. That they're getting that from China too. So you can legally import that stuff to manufacture and use for as a controlled substance. And there's more regulation and more testing and taxes and the whole thing. But if you're, it is like the stuff that's illegal, like the fentanyl and these fentanyl analogs, those go straight to Mexico. Mexico, Mexico makes them and turns it into fentanyl, and then they illegally bring it into the country and get it into the black market. But China looks at it as, we're not doing anything wrong. These substances on their own are legal. We're making those. Yeah, but you're selling all those things directly to the cartels. Well, what they do with it after we sell it's not our business. So that's why they call it kind of a gray market. It's not black market. It's not necessarily illicit because the individual components on their own are not illegal. It'd be crazy to say that, not crazy because they only really have like one real purpose. But it's like you could say like, well, how can you go after us for this? We're just a chemical company. We're just, we make nitrogen and phosphorus too, but you're also making this, which is killing 80,000 people a year. Well, we're not doing it. Mexico's doing it. Mm-hmm. So that's where it comes in. It's like, well, if that's going to be the attitude of China, I kind of think this in general. And I know people will be like, well, that's impossible. Logistically, it'd be so expensive. Put our fucking National Guard or our military on the border. You got a huge problem with all these, if something is killing 80,000 people a year, we should have the full might of the U.S. military to protect our citizenry, and this is the number one killer. So we should set up bases all along the wall and all along the trade routes, and bump up the DEA to go after these things specifically and stop all this shit. So you're saving 80,000 lives, and then maybe there is, take a page out of China's book where it's like, if you get caught with it, it is compulsory rehab. And I can't remember where I heard this too, but somebody had the idea to, if you get caught and arrested, okay, your options are jail, or you can go and do like kind of like sounded the idea that I heard was kind of like, almost sounded like a drug rehab facility that's kind of like house arrest, but you're working on a farm, you're working with children or whatever, and you give, in addition to the rehab, and like, because there will be chemical I can't remember the name of the drug that they use to get people off of heroin and these opioids, but you're on these treatments. You're going to therapy.
Suboxone?
I think that's it. I think that is it. Thank you. And so you're doing all these things, and you have a purpose, or you're learning a skill. Okay, like, hey, like you dropped out of high school because you had, some accident where you hurt your back and you got addicted, and now you just feel like I have no hope. Okay, well, you're gonna have, you're not gonna be in the prison system, but you're gonna go to this place where you're gonna have administered rehab, and you're gonna learn how to be an electrician. You're gonna learn how to be a carpenter or a farmer or something, and you're gonna come out of this program clean and with a skill and job placement. And you just kind of get those, quote unquote, those fighting age males back into the economy where they have a purpose, and you're less likely to have a relapse because your life is oriented the right way. And it's like you're not just kind of, it's like you're treating the disease rather than just the symptoms. Yeah. And you don't have these people going in and out, in and out, in and out forever. I thought that was a really good idea. So it's like we are the richest country that's ever existed. And there are problems that happen in this country where it's like, why don't we just put our resources towards that? We got all these things going on all over the world. We're spending money recklessly, crazily. Why don't we just save 80,000 lives a year by stopping the flow of fentanyl? And if the people who are already addicted, well, let's spend I don't know what the number is. Let's spend 20, 30, 50 billion on these kind of centers that can genuinely have a higher success rate of rehabbing people. And I think that would be a pretty good plan. And I do think that if you have an organization like the cartels that are doing all this damage, fucking drone the plants and make it impossible for them to get the stuff across the country, across the border. And I do think that if with the right amount of effort and money, you could make it virtually impossible. Mm-hmm. There just isn't the appetite for it.
Yeah.
That's that.
Light episode.
Mm-hmm.
Light episode.
It's fascinating, though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Horrifying. Just, dude, it doesn't make sense why. I mean, I guess.
Which part doesn't make sense?
Why we haven't gone down there and try to clean up some of the cartel stuff.
There is precedent for that. Wasn't it the DEA working with the Colombian government that toppled Pablo? DEA and we've done that. We've used our military and special forces and things in the past, and different agencies. What was that show on Netflix?
Yeah, it was.
What's his face?
Escobar? No, it was Narcos.
Narcos, yeah.
Narcos.
Where it's we have DEA agents who live down there in an attempt, and they're working with the government, and that's Mexico's a narco state. They're not they run everything. Mm-hmm. They're not. It's not like you can just go to their president and be like, hey, why don't you clean up your house? Be like, well, they'll fucking murder me. Mm-hmm. So it's they're a narco state, and I think we should start treating them as such, where it's hey, we know this area has a very productive lab for whatever it is. Fucking send a drone over there and blow it up. And if there will be casualties, and that's always a tragedy, but anybody who's working in that lab is making things that kill Americans. And you just can't let that go unfettered forever.
But that's when the deep conspiracy brain kicks in, and it's who's benefiting on this whole thing in America?
You're saying the military industrial complex,
yes.
The people who are making the drones?
Yes.
Well,
and who's benefiting off of this
somebody's
national
always going to
tragedy?
Yeah, and maybe there's probably people benefiting from the current state so much that no one's really doing anything about it. I can't really figure that out, and maybe it is. I don't know who could be.
Maybe we'll try to have.
I think we should get this Ben Westhoff on.
Okay.
So he's the guy who wrote that book, Fentanyl Inc., and he's the one who went to China and was a fake drug dealer, and he's done media rounds before. I think he did Rogan maybe 3 or 4 years ago. He's done, he's spoke before Congress about this, and I think we could probably get him. We should try to get him.
Be good.
Yeah.
Be good. All right then, man. Crazy shit.
Crazy.
That's it. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for watching. Back tomorrow with a free swim. Free swim will be the last episode of the week, and then obviously, and we'll probably play a best of.
Okay.
Probably do a best of draft on Thursday. All right, then. That's it, everybody. See you tomorrow.